On the Sunday evening of January 5, 2006, a man and his girl showed up at his companion's family house for another year's get-together party. He finds the entryway open, which was something standard the hosts did during their gatherings. After entering, he experienced a thick haze of smoke, inciting him to caution others, and they reached the specialists. Firemen quickly showed up, quenched the fire, yet unfortunately found the dead groups of the party as the Harvey family, what at first appeared as though a fire-related episode transformed into a chilling disclosure. The Harvey had not surrendered to the blazes, yet rather succumbed to something undeniably more vile, and it was presently a homicide. Examination. This left the specialists genuinely shaken as well as confused at the dreary new development. What truly occurred here and who had killed them? This is the disastrous instance of the Harvey family. 49-year-old Brian Tuba Harvey, a neighborhood symbol, earned respect during the 1980s as the vocalist-musician for the underground non-mainstream band Place of Monstrosities. Notwithstanding heading out in different directions expertly with his melodic accomplice Johnny Hott during the 90s, they stayed dear companions. Brian, a gay performer, made that big appearance once and for all at another Year's Eve show that was tragically and unbeknownst to him the last evening of his life. Then again, 39-year-old Catherine Elizabeth Grabinski made progress as the CEO proprietor of the famous toy store Universe of Jollity, situated in Richmond's Convey Town region, a local area support point. She was a craftsman engaged with different undertakings, from painting sets for local area theatre to filling in as a baked good cook and server. Catherine had a more established sister, Shelley Grabinski, and was likewise the stepsister of entertainer Stephen Culp, known for his jobs in The West Wing and Frantic Housewives, among different movies. The ways of Brian and Catherine would ultimately cross at the Boundary Bistro on Central Avenue, where Catherine worked and Brian much of the time chatted with Johnny. In 1990 they sealed the deal, and the Place of Oddities delivered a collection highlighting a melody committed to Catherine named I Got Cheerful. The couple invited two little girls into their lives, Heavenly, and their most memorable little girl was brought into the world in 1996. Pondering parenthood, Brian communicated on a fan site, I think I've verged on realizing the reason why I'm here on Earth since my girl was conceived. I think you must be confident about existence. When you have a kid, you owe it to them. Their second girl, Ruby May, was brought into the world in 2001. While Brian proceeded with his melodic interests, he likewise accepted on a position dealing with PCs for the Henrio Province educational system. Kathy then again left on the enterprising way by opening Universe of Mira, one-of-a-kind toy and gift store that turned into a foundation in the chic vehicle town area. Her sibling Stephen Culp made sense of in court. She needed to make a space where guardians could accompany their children and invest energy, and children could play with the toys. There's no firearms or swords or any such thing there. It's a brilliant spot. The Harvey laid out their home in a masterful old area on the south side of Richmond that had huge trees, yard swings and ivy covered environmental factors. They had a family room in the storm cellar of their two-story red block house. The wonderful family were notable and darling locally of Richmond, and nobody truly had terrible goals towards them, or so everybody thought. On New Year's Day, Sunday 2006, Brian, his significant other Catherine, and their two little girls, 9-year-old Stella and 4-year-old Ruby, expected a clamoring day ahead. Their arrangements included facilitating a noon grill for loved ones, provoking them to rise early and get ready for the impending merriments. It had turned into a custom for them to set up a party each New Year's Day, assembling their broad friend network for the event. On that specific Sunday morning, Brian wandered external their home in the chic Forest Levels area of Richmond, Virginia, to recover the paper consumed in the headline news. He returned inside without locking the entryway. However, since they resided in a somewhat protected area, this wouldn't regularly have been a reason to worry. Normally they likewise didn't get the entryway on party days, leaving it open for showing up companions anyway. On this game-changing day, unbeknownst to Brian, sharp hoodlums were surreptitiously hiding close by Catherine, hectically pre-arranged treats in the kitchen for the expected visitors, who were expected to show up in practically no time. Abruptly she heard voices radiating from the parlor, accepting somebody had shown up sooner than anticipated. To her disappointment, after moving toward, she was defied not by natural faces but rather by two obscure men. In the strained minutes that resulted, Brian, Catherine and youthful Ruby were coordinated down the stairs to the storm cellar. Den Stella, who had gone through the earlier night at a sleep party, presently couldn't seem to go along with them. Once the family was bound to the little space, the gatecrashers utilized electrical strings and pressing tape to tie them, guaranteeing that collaboration would forestall any damage towards them. As they continued to scour the house, a thump on the front entryway hindered them, happening around 10 a.m. The obvious head of the gathering set Catherine free from her limitations and taught her to manage whoever was at the entryway anyway. Prior to allowing her to leave, he gave a harsh admonition: in the event that she looked for help or endeavored to get away from her little girl and spouse would be killed. As Stella's appearance was impending and upset Catherine, wound up trapped in a troublesome situation, noting the entryway would open her girl to a similar hazard as the remainder of the family. While disregarding the constant thumping could cause the fury of the assailant, who obviously held the high ground, at last she presumed that participation was the most reasonable decision, and with that choice she opened the entryway. In an unforeseen turn development, Stella quickly shot past Catherine and advanced straightforwardly to the den where the family typically hung out a lot. Acting rapidly, Catherine blocked her girl's companion, keeping her from following Kyron Perkinson. The companion's mom later related her shock at Catherine's surprising way of behaving, which veered off from her commonplace richness in light of Perkinson's request about her prosperity. Catherine, regularly vivacious, professed to be unwell. She signaled with a round movement to the side of her head, copying a firearm to show somebody may be viewed as insane, suddenly finishing the discussion and closing the entryway. This curious motion would later difficulty Perkinson, who contemplated whether Catherine was endeavoring to convey something. Was Cathy being observed by the gatecrashers? Might she at any point have endeavored a departure, possibly saving herself and Stella? Anyway, the situation of abandoning Brian and Ruby weighed vigorously at the forefront of Catherine's thoughts. Perkinson left, wanting to return later for the party with each of the four. Harvey now inside the house. Catherine got back to the storm cellar and found a scared Stella, who had been safely restricted close by the remainder of the family, as everybody lay bound and weak. Bedlam ejected unexpectedly and without advance notice. The man in control uncovered a blade said from the Harvey's own kitchen and started slicing their throats, including those of the youthful young ladies, communicating disappointment that they were not capitulating rapidly sufficient. He educated his accessory to cudgel their heads anyway. The accomplice denied, provoking the aggressor to get a hook hammer and mercilessly strike them over and over until they quit moving. In the wake of eliminating Catherine Harvey's wedding band, the assaults lighted the room, involving wine as a catalyst to disguise proof of their terrible goes about. As they made their break from the home, they enjoyed a plate of newly prepared treats that sat cooling on the kitchen counter and took a PC Blu-ray player and different things. Surging out, they entered the escape vehicle left external. Inside the escape vehicle was a lady who was involved with one of the men, filling in as a post during what was at first planned as a basic burglary. They quickly withdrew, leaving the scene similarly as unnoticeably as they had shown up. At some point later, at around 1:30 p.m., Johnny Hott showed up for the celebratory social event. After opening the front entryway, he was welcomed by a thick haze of smoke spilling out. Frightened by the impactful smell of consuming, he cautioned the neighbors, who immediately dialed 911 as crisis responders entered the premises and managed the fire. Sadly, they experienced 4 bodies in the burning hot cellar, still unblemished. Examiners at the scene before long concluded that the fire didn't bring about their end, yet rather a more vile reason for death was disclosed, and this had now turned into a homicide. Examination cops and paramedics, who were familiar with seeing the haziest parts of humankind, were accounted for to have found the nerve-wracking scene so upsetting that a few transparently cried tears. The disclosure that the guardians had been constrained to observe the severe end of their kids as well as the other way around was miserable to envision. Dissections uncovered that Brian and Catherine met their end due to dull fork injury to the head. Stella, unfortunately, surrendered to a blend of gruff power injury and smoke inward breath, recommending she was alive when the fire lighted. Notwithstanding her shocking wounds, Ruby's destruction came about because of cut injuries to her neck and back. Regardless of starting a quick examination concerning the killings, the specialists had little proof. Perceiving the potential for crooks to uncover data, they spoke to the general population for help, and luckily their advancement came a couple of days after the fact. On January 6, a lady named Latoya Pye reached the police, encouraging them to direct a government assistance check. On her companion 21-year-old Ashley Basile Exhaust Pie communicated her interests as she accepted that Ashley's sweetheart 29-year-old Ree Joseph Dandridge and his uncle 29-year-old Ricky Javan Dim were engaged with the Harvey family's homicide. Ricky, who was somewhat more youthful than his nephew by a couple of months, was supposed to be the one in control. The stunning disclosure went on as Dad unveiled that the two men had reserved proof of their violations at her home. She uncovered that Dim and Dandridge had as of late visited her home with a PC that had a picture of the Harvey as its backdrop. The Harvey case had by then gotten broad inclusion in the news, leaving presumably that the PC had a place with them. Furthermore, LaToya gave perplexing insights regarding a plan conceived by Ashley, Dim and Dandridge to loot Ashley's folks. In this plan, Ashley should go about as a prisoner, permitting Ricky and Dark to coerce cash from the Basile exhausts, which would depict Ashley as blameless, notwithstanding being conscious of the whole arrangement and being offered a job. LaToya declined, becoming dubious of the threesome. The uncle and nephew were the ones in particular that returned hours after the fact, and when gotten some information about Ashley's whereabouts, they enigmatically answered, "Ashley has gone." By this assertion uplifted LaToya's interests, provoking her to contact the police. It was this urgent data that agents expected to begin coming to an obvious conclusion. Having affirmed LaToya's data, examiners continued to the home where Ashley dwelled with her mom, 46-year-old Mary Basile Exhaust, and stepfather, 55-year-old Purcell Exhaust. To their shock, they experienced one more grisly scene. After entering the home, they found the inert collections of each of the three casualties exposed to a severe technique like the Harvey family's destiny. The casualties were bound, choked, and had their throats hard-heartedly cut. Pipe tape twisted firmly around their heads caused extra languishing over Mary and Pearl, who both showed profound neck slashes. Pearl had a sock effectively embedded into his throat. Ashley unfortunately was found to have been choked with a plastic pack. The normal reason for death for every one of the not set in stone to be suffocation and torment, associating the presence with thrill. Executioners policing from across the district teamed up in a joint work to secure them before they could execute further monstrosities like the Harvey. Purcell and Mary had calm existences without holding on to any foes. Purcell functioned as a forklift administrator while Mary was utilized by a housekeeping business. Their quiet presence was broken by the disloyalty from their own girl, eventually prompting the shocking destruction of a guiltless couple who tried to partake in their brilliant years. The agents quickly revealed the essential connection between the Harvey and Exhausts. Ashley was found wearing Brian Harvey's wedding ring, the very one that was absent and taken from Catherine. With this disclosure, pressing activity was basic to catch Dim and Dandridge before they could cause further hopeless damage, having followed their developments back to their home province of Pennsylvania. Dim, furthermore, DeAndre were caught in Philadelphia on January 7. In his scrutinizing, Dandridge declared that the homicides had been brought about by his uncle and he had simply adhered to guidelines. Confronted with these implicating allegations, Dark promptly owned up to the killings of the Harvey and his association in those of Ashley and her folks. While these clear admissions were sufficient to leave anybody astonished, it became obvious that this was only the starting. Dim gave grisly, many-sided subtleties of both family slaughters, stressing that their activities were driven exclusively by the requirement for cash. During the Harvey family kills, unbeknownst to everybody, he was affected by PCP or phenylcyclohexol. Pip writing is a medication known for instigating hearable and visual mental trips as well as savage conduct. All through his admission, Dim kept a chilling, unfeeling gaze. His unadulterated indifference with regards to the lives he took persuaded specialists to think they were face to face with Satan. Manifest. It was likewise uncovered that Dim was liable for the homicide of his better half, Trevor Terrell Dark, whose body was uncovered in a shallow grave on Brookside Road in Washington, Pennsylvania. The couple had been hitched for a very long time before her shocking homicide and dwelled together in a house possessed by Trevor's family alongside Dim's nephew Ree. As per Trevor's folks, the Dims regularly participated in severe contentions. Hook blemishes on Ricky's lower arm were even found on the day Trevor's body was found, in spite of being consulted By Washington police, neither Dim nor Dandridge were at first considered suspects. Mana assistants Trevor's mom claimed that policing Trevor had surrendered to a medication glut, prompting a lackadaisical examination concerning her passing, in spite of the fact that Trevor's downfall was considered dubious at the time. A murder examination was just started after Dim's admission in 2006. On December 31, 2005, a severe attack unfurled where 26-year-old Ryan K.Y. was gone after by two men before his folks' Arlington home, who were later distinguished as Dark and Dandridge. The attack left vehicle with serious beating and cut injuries to the chest, neck and arms, bringing about a close to lethal attack that made him spend the accompanying 2 weeks in a trance-like state. Furthermore, he for all time lost the utilization of his right arm. On February 9, 2006, Ricky Dim had to deal with 5 penalties of capital homicide, while Beam Dandridge was prosecuted on 3 counts of homicide for his contribution in the Baskerville exhaust killings. Regardless of their prior confirmations, the two men argued not blameworthy. Following a 6-month preliminary, the jury found Dim blameworthy all in all, prompting a lifelong incarceration for the killings of Brian and Catherine Harvey. In light of the merciless taking of Stella and Ruby's lives, the court considered nothing under a capital punishment suitable. In September 2006, following his uncle's conviction and in the wake of learning the decision for his situation, Dandridge picked a request arrangement to dodge capital punishment. He got a lifelong incarceration without the chance of parole. In December 2006, Ricky Dark confronted charges from C. Pepper District for the homicide of Cheryl Warner, a 37-year-old lawful secretary and mother of 3. Warner was found shot and draped by an electrical string in the cellar of her copying Reaver home. Dark entered a not blameworthy request anyway. On June 4, 2008, the charge was suspended because of clashing proof over the ensuing 9 years. Dim's legitimate group sought after various requests, fundamentally contending that their clients experienced reduced limit because of a harmful youth. The case arrived at the preeminent court, where it was immediately dismissed in 2016. In November 2016, Dim was planned to be executed on January 18, 2017. On January 18, 2017, with his requests depleted, Ricky Dark was all executed by deadly infusion at Greensville Remedial Center. Beam Dandridge actually remains imprisoned at Sussex 2 State Jail. The severe homicides of the Harvey family released a staggering flood of awfulness and distress, with more than 1,400 people going to their dedication administration, communicating their sympathies and sadness before Kathy's store blossoms. What's more, dolls stacked up and framed a strong recognition along the check outside the red block house. Kids put candles which kept up with their shine for a really long time. A neighbor considered the local area's aggregate grieving, expressing, "We kept those candles lit for quite a long time." Kathy's sibling Culp affirmed about the significant effect of the homicides, portraying them as a lightning bolt to the heart that felt endless. He further communicated, "I hate to ponder their last hours. We are attempting to move beyond this. You realize we owe it to them and to their soul." Inside Richmond's backwoods slope park, an entry to a footspan is decorated with a stone landmark, a piercing devotion to the Harvey family. This family, who had recently delighted in numerous happy minutes at the site, saw their lives suddenly and unfortunately cut off. A bronze plaque portraying their brilliant grins fills in as a recognition of more joyful days before the unbelievable detestable penetrated their lives, destroying everything afterward.